You are standing outside a state banquet in New Delhi in December 2025, and the car easing to a stop at the red carpet does not look like it is moving 6.5 tons of reinforced steel, because the suspension is tuned to hide exactly that. This is the Dossier Center. Russian state media calls it a symbol of national engineering pride. Everyone else calls it what it actually is, the most armored object Vladimir Putin will ever sit inside that isn't a bunker. Here is what the manufacturer and multiple government security briefings confirm about this vehicle. The body is rated to resist high-caliber rifle rounds and armor-piercing ammunition. The undercarriage is built to survive a blast directly beneath it. The tires are run flat, reinforced to keep functioning even if every one of them is destroyed simultaneously. The fuel system is sealed against ignition. And in the single detail that sounds the most like fiction and is, according to manufacturer claims, real, the Dossier Center can float. If the car ever ends up in water, the cabin is designed to keep its occupant alive long enough to escape. It has its own independent air filtration system, built specifically to keep a chemical or gas attack outside the cabin while the man inside breathes air that never touched the street. This is the car Putin rode in for 45 minutes alongside Indian Prime Minister Modi after the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit, and that detail matters, because the Dossier Center is not just a fortress. It is one of the only rooms on Earth where Putin can speak to another head of state with total confidence that no microphone planted outside the vehicle can hear a word. Here is the part of the story almost nobody puts together. The same year this car carried him through New Delhi, a former chief of British intelligence stated publicly that he was certain Putin uses body doubles for some public appearances, not as a rumor, but as a considered professional assessment from a man who used to run MI6. We will come back to that. For now, understand this, the armored car is the part of Putin's security operation he is willing to let you see. It is the visible fortress, built to be photographed, built to project invulnerability on camera. The parts of the operation built to never be seen at all are far stranger. At 10,000 meters over Russian airspace, there is an aircraft that looks, on radar, like an ordinary state visit flight. It is anything but ordinary. The Ilyushin IL-96-300 PU, nicknamed by security analysts and journalists the Flying Kremlin, is a Soviet-designed four-engine airframe from the 1980s that any commercial airline would have retired decades ago. Putin keeps flying it anyway, because what matters is not the airframe. What matters is everything bolted inside it. This aircraft seats over 260 people, can fly more than 11,000 kilometers without refueling, and according to multiple security briefings carries a missile defense system, an advanced military communications array, a fully staffed medical unit, a gym, a private bedroom, a dining room, and, by several independent reports, the same nuclear command capability that follows the Russian president everywhere on Earth he travels. The plane is not transportation. It is a mobile extension of the Kremlin itself, which is exactly what the nickname means. Here is the part designed specifically to defeat you if you are trying to target this aircraft. The Flying Kremlin reportedly has at least 3 identical decoy aircraft. When Putin flies internationally, multiple IL-96s take off from Russian airspace at overlapping times, on different flight paths, broadcasting identical transponder signatures. Any adversary trying to track Putin's exact aircraft using publicly available flight tracking data, the same kind any of us could pull up right now, is looking at 4 planes that all claim to be the president's, with no way to confirm from outside which one he is actually inside. It is an elegant solution. It also has a flaw that Russian investigative journalists in exile have pointed out directly: a plane, however well disguised, is still a plane. It still has to file a flight plan. It still appears, however briefly, on radar. For aircraft give you 4 targets instead of 1, which is exactly why, for journeys inside Russia, Putin prefers something that doesn't fly at all. If you saw his train pass through a Russian rail yard, you would not look twice. Gray paint. Red stripe. The same livery as thousands of ordinary Russian trains. The only details that separate it from any other train on the line are a small communications dome on the roof and the unusual number of diesel locomotives coupled at the front, multiple engines, because the cars behind them are so heavily armored that standard rail axles cannot bear the weight. Each car reportedly runs on 6 axles instead of the usual 4, just to carry the reinforced steel hidden inside what looks, from the outside, like an unremarkable Russian railway's carriage. Leaked documents, allegedly sourced from an insider at the rail manufacturing firm contracted to build the interior cars, and published by the Dossier Center, an investigative project run by Russians living in exile, describe what is inside. A sleeping car. A working office car. A dining car. A car reportedly fitted out as a private gym and spa, soundproofed specifically to defeat audio surveillance, complete with a Turkish steam bath. The Kremlin has denied that any such train car has ever been used by Putin personally. The documents exist regardless, and Russian Railways' own internal systems reportedly show the train's movements, but only to insiders with special access. To the public, and to public timetables, it simply does not exist. It does not stop at ordinary stations. By multiple accounts, it runs on private spur lines that terminate at stations built for no purpose other than reaching Putin's residences directly, at least 3 of them, including lines serving his properties at Novoogoryovo outside Moscow and at Valdai, the residence where he and his family reportedly spend the most time of any property he holds. A car that can take a direct hit and keep driving. A fleet of identical jets so no tracking website can say which one carries the president. A train invisible to the public timetable, running on tracks that lead to houses most Russians will never see. This is what Vladimir Putin built to move his body safely from one place to another. It is not, by a significant margin, the strangest part of his security operation. Every Russian who watches state television knows this room. The long table. The particular shade of wood paneling. The window light falling a specific way across the desk where Putin records his addresses to the nation, a desk Russians have now watched him sit at for war declarations, holiday greetings, and emergency broadcasts since the invasion of Ukraine began. Here is what a team of investigative journalists noticed, frame by frame, comparing footage shot months apart. The door handle in one broadcast sits at a different height than the door handle in another. A thermostat that should be centered on the wall is shifted left in one recording and lower in the next. The wall panels behind the president's chair are arranged in a subtly different pattern from broadcast to broadcast. The air vents on the television cabinet do not match. The conclusion that journalists reached, and that has not been seriously disputed since, Putin appears to have had near-identical replicas of his Novoogoryovo office constructed inside at least 2 of his other residences, Valdai and Sochi among them. When he records an address that states it is coming from his official residence, there is, by design, no way for anyone watching to verify that claim is true. He could be recording from any one of 3 buildings hundreds of kilometers apart, in front of a set built to be indistinguishable from the original. The logic is simple and almost elegant in its paranoia. If no one, not the public, not a hostile intelligence service, not even most of his own staff, can confirm his real location at any given moment, then no one can target it either. Reports since the invasion of Ukraine suggest he has gone further still, reportedly avoiding his Sochi residence specifically over fears of Ukrainian drone strikes, with some accounts claiming the surrounding village was even cleared. A man cannot be hit if no one can agree on where he is standing. This is the moment in the story where you have to ask what kind of life produces this level of architectural deception around your own face. Putin spent years as a KGB officer stationed in East Germany, watching from inside the system as the government he served collapsed in 1989, watched crowds tear down the apparatus of a state that, like his own intelligence service, had believed itself permanent. People who study him closely point to that collapse, and to his formative years inside an intelligence service built entirely on the assumption that everyone is lying to you, as the likely root of a worldview where civil society itself reads as a threat, and popular uprising reads as the thing that ends men like him. Whatever the cause, the effect is documented. A leader who has built duplicate rooms so that his own broadcasts cannot reliably be traced to a location. And he is not finished. Before Vladimir Putin eats a meal during a foreign state visit, that meal has already been tested in a portable laboratory traveling with his security detail. His personal chefs do not use ingredients sourced locally. By multiple journalistic accounts, an advance team arrives at a host country's hotel weeks ahead of the visit, clears the kitchen of existing food, and replaces it entirely with supplies flown in from Russia. The cooks themselves are reportedly trained military personnel, not civilian catering staff. Here is the detail that sounds invented and is reported by multiple outlets covering his recent state visits, including the December 2025 trip to India. Putin's security detail reportedly collects his own bodily waste during foreign travel and transports it back to Russia with the delegation. The stated purpose is denying any foreign intelligence service the chance to analyze it for indicators of his health. Whether or not every detail of this practice is confirmed, the documented pattern around it, closed food supply chains, military-trained kitchen staff, mobile toxicology labs, points to a man who has built an entire mobile biosecurity perimeter around the single act of eating dinner in a country that is not his own. The selection standards for the men physically closest to him are reportedly just as exacting. Candidates for his inner protective detail are described as required to stand within a narrow height range, meet specific weight thresholds, speak foreign languages, and train to operate in extreme weather conditions, with mandatory retirement at age 35, ensuring the detail is permanently staffed by men at peak physical condition. These are the guards reported to have physically intervened during a 2025 meeting with Kim Jong-un, stepping in when the North Korean leader moved closer to Putin than protocol allowed. And then there is the claim that the Kremlin has spent years denying outright, and that a former head of British intelligence said in 2025 he is personally certain is true: body doubles. Ukraine's military intelligence chief has stated publicly, repeatedly, since 2022, that at least 3 men trained to resemble Putin periodically appear in his place at events, some allegedly altered through plastic surgery to match his bone structure more closely, distinguishable, if at all, only by small details like earlobe shape or gait. A Japanese broadcaster ran AI-assisted facial and movement analysis on years of Putin's public footage in 2023 and concluded the man at one Victory Day parade was likely the genuine Putin, but flagged a separate appearance, an inspection of the Crimean Bridge, as possibly someone else entirely. The Kremlin's official position has not moved in over 2 decades. Putin himself has said a plan to use body doubles was proposed to him in the early 2000s and that he rejected it. His spokesman has called every subsequent claim a hoax, a joke, something that makes the president laugh. No independently verified, court-grade evidence of a specific double has ever surfaced publicly. What does exist, on the record, is a former Russian Federal Protective Service officer who told journalists in exile that there was at least one documented instance of a decoy operation, a lookalike driven to an airport in full public view, boarding a flight to a publicized destination, while the real Putin remained behind in Sochi and went about his actual schedule unobserved. Whether that happened once, or many times, or is simply the most convincing version of a rumor that refuses to die, the fact that it is even plausible tells you something about the man at the center of it. Plausibility is the entire currency of this kind of fear. Add it together. An armored car rated to survive armor-piercing rounds, blast waves, and submersion. A fleet of decoy aircraft built specifically to make tracking mathematically unreliable. A train that does not officially exist, running on rails that lead to houses most of his own citizens have never heard of. An office duplicated at least twice so that even a televised address cannot reveal where he actually is. A mobile food safety operation that flies its own military-trained cooks and tests every meal before it touches his plate. A protective detail recruited to exacting physical standards and retired before age can slow them down. And, by the consistent and repeated claim of an entire foreign intelligence service plus a former head of MI6, multiple men trained to stand in his place when the risk calculation says he should not be the one standing there. This is not the security profile of a man who feels safe. It is the security profile of a man who has concluded that every layer of protection, however expensive, however absolute on paper, will eventually be tested by someone he cannot predict, and who has therefore decided the only rational response is to make himself, physically, almost impossible to locate, to verify, or to reach. Long meeting tables that keep visitors meters away from him. Inner circles drawn almost exclusively from former intelligence colleagues he has known for decades, the same instinct that shaped him in East Germany in 1989, watching a state he believed in dissolve in a matter of weeks. A war in Ukraine that has, by every public account, only intensified every one of these measures rather than relaxed any of them, the cleared village near Sochi, the deepened secrecy around the train's destinations, the increased reliance on identical offices and pre-recorded ambiguity about where his voice is actually coming from. Here is the question this entire architecture of protection cannot answer, because no architecture can. You can armor a car against bullets. You can multiply your aircraft until tracking becomes statistically meaningless. You can build 3 identical rooms so no broadcast reveals your coordinates. You can fly your own cooks and test every plate and collect every trace of biological evidence before a rival government can analyze it. You can train men to stand in your place when the risk is too high for you to stand there yourself. None of it produces the one thing every other layer was supposedly built to deliver. A man with this many defenses, stacked this high, for this many years, has not described a feeling of safety to anyone. He has described, through every measure he has approved, a permanent and apparently bottomless expectation that the next attempt is already being planned, by someone, somewhere, and that no fortress yet built has been enough to make that expectation go away. The Oris Senate can float. It cannot answer that. Neither can the train with no timetable, or the office that exists 3 times, or the men who might, on any given day, be him instead of him.